If you've ever watched NASCAR, or any form of racing, then there's a chance you've seen one of these in your lifetime. These are called sprint cars, also known as the best show on dirt. Sprint cars can run on 3 motors, that being a 305, 360, and 410 cubic inch motors. Many drivers drive 305s due to how cheap they are, only costing around 15 grand, and are the safest sprint car due to how slow they are compared to 360s and 410s. But on the other hand, 360s and 410s will set you back at least 60 grand. And that's not even adding in the cost for tires, a trailer, wings, better parts. There is so much that will add up to driving a sprint car. Thousands of drivers battle it out every year, spending countless hours to improve on their sprint car. Tons of hardworking people spending their hard-earned money just to watch some of their favorite drivers rip around those turns every Saturday. To many, this may look like a hobby, but to drivers and fans alike, sprint car racing is life. This is me at 2 years old. Growing up in a racing family, some of the most cherishable moments of my childhood were at the track. With my grandpa and my dad racing, I spent most of my childhood at the races. But enough of that. Let's go back in time, where one man would change the motorsport of sprint car racing for good. It is 1978. Former midget racer from Madison, Wisconsin, Ted Johnson, creates the World of Outlaws to be the true national touring sprint car series in North America, with a set of rules, a point system, and 41 total races. And with that came the most revolutionary era in sprint car racing. Many racers such as Steve Kinser, Doug Wolfgang, Jack Hewitt, Bobby Allen, and many more being full-time racers for that tour. Before 1978, sprint car racing never really had any official national tours, and were mostly state-only leagues, such as the PA Posse and NARC, just to name a few. After the creation of the World of Outlaws, it was a total hit to the fans, and became the most successful sprint car racing tour in the world, and is the dream spot for thousands of drivers out there, hoping one day they can be the Outlaw champion. Now, if we're going to talk about sprint car racing, we cannot talk about it without making a whole segment dedicated to this man right here. His name is Steve Kinser, also known as the best sprint car racer of all time. With 577 total Outlaw wins and a 20-time World of Outlaws champion, I guess you could say this man definitely has a qualification to be considered the best of all time. Starting off his World of Outlaws career in 1978, Steve would always stay consistent, and got 11 wins his rookie year. Now you may think that's a lot, but wait until I show you this. This man could not stop winning. Steve has become an inspiration to many drivers out there. If you ask anyone who their favorite driver is of all time, 9 times out of 10 it's gonna be Steve. It's safe to say, sprint car racing as a whole would not be the same without Steve Kinser. And the same goes for any form of racing. There's always going to be a rivalry in the mix. You probably already know who I'm talking about. Sammy Swindell. Starting his career the same year as Steve, Swindell started off really slow his rookie year, and only got 2 wins. Then the next few years he started slowly getting more up. Then we cut to the year of 1981. Steve Kinser is absolutely unstoppable, with 3 Outlaw championships on his belt already, looking for another championship victory, but Sammy made sure his name was known, and did the same thing the next year. Sammy unfortunately wouldn't get to see another championship until 1997, which was his final World of Outlaws championship. Steve and Sammy would become the hugest rivalry in sprint car racing, and almost in every interview they do, that question is always brought up. Lots of NASCAR drivers have started their career in dirt track racing in the 80s and 90s, with the most notable being Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart, with Tony Stewart continuing his career in sprint car racing after his retirement from NASCAR in 2016. And one of the most well-known NASCAR drivers in the 2000s, Casey Kane, being an almost full-time World of Outlaws driver this year, and lots of up-and-comers like Christopher Bell getting a start in dirt track racing as well. Throughout the 90s, sprint cars started to change their appearance, and started to look more similar to what they look like now. Wings started to get more blocky, engine hoods started to get more smoothed down, more than it was, and of course safety features updating as well. But as the same with every other motorsport, there are risks to it as well. Many drivers in the past have got into some scary wrecks, and unfortunately lots of drivers have met their fate at the racetrack as well. With how fast sprint cars can get, once you lose control, there's no telling what can happen. Many people have stayed away from non-wing sprint cars, as they are more dangerous than the wing sprint cars, due to them not having any downforce from a wing. There are countless amounts of people who have passed away from sprint car crashes before roll cages were implemented, as there was nothing to do since your body wasn't protected. You can find many videos of sprint car crashes online. Luckily most crashes end up with everyone okay, or just slight injuries. But every once in a while something unimaginable happens. Drivers such as Jason Johnson, Greg Hodnett, Jason Leffler, Steve King, and most recently Justin Owen, and many others have lost their lives in sprint car crashes over the years. Safety has always been a concern to sprint car racing as a whole. Just recently, a crash at Bridgeport scared lots of people, and got people wondering about the safety of roll cages. The cage left most of the bars of the safety cage broken, and the whole car destroyed. It's a miracle that Justin Peck was not injured after this at all. Luckily nowadays it is extremely rare for something bad to happen to a driver, and when something does, the community is always there to show you love and support. And drivers sometimes get out of their cars to help a fellow driver out of a crash sometimes as well, which just happened recently with Carson Macedo at Knoxville.
It's still burning. I'm just glad he's conscious. That's another driver, is it?
Getting these guys.
Oh, there's a lot of...
You got it.
With how popular sprint car racing has gotten, there are so many different divisions and leagues that have been implemented over the past 60 plus years. All-Star Circuit of Champions, USAC, and just starting this year the High Limit Series. But nothing has even gotten close to the popularity of the World of Outlaws. With popularity comes lots of money, and this year in particular is a revolutionary year for sprint car racing. For the first year ever, the Eldora Million will be hosting sprint cars, so one lucky driver will go home with $1 million. Ever since the beginning, sprint car drivers have always been producing merchandise. Over the years, the merchandise has gotten better and better. Just around 40 years ago, drivers started making diecast. And just recently, sprint cars have gotten an upgrade in diecast making, with Acme releasing, in my opinion, the most realistic sprint car diecast ever released. And just as time goes on, technology keeps getting better and better, and the quality of the merchandise will keep on getting better and better. And speaking of technology, around 21 years ago, Ratbat Games released the best sprint car game of all time. World of Outlaws 2002 was such an amazing game. It was way ahead of its time, and the physics were genuinely not that bad. I remember playing it so much when I was younger. The World of Outlaws have released 2 more video games since then, one being in 2010, which I'm not much of a fan of that one, and just recently back in 2022, which is by far the most realistic sprint car game. Well behind iRacing, of course. Tony Stewart also released a sprint car game back in February 2020, which was associated with the previously mentioned All-Star Circuit of Champions. So as you guys can tell, sprint car racing has gradually moved its way over to social media. Many drivers have started documenting their races or making race day vlogs for YouTube. Drivers such as Tanner Holmes and Billy Dietrich have a channel specifically made for racing content. And as time goes on, I feel like more people will get into documenting their races. And some outlaw drivers making videos as well, such as David Gravel and sometimes Rico Abreu. All in all, the community of sprint car racing is one of the most passionate communities in all of racing. Every time I go to the races, I always feel a sense of intensity and passion. The smell of gasoline, dirt in the air, tear-offs flying in the wind. That is what I call racing.